This is the Kia EV6, and it may look similar to the one that we tested last year, but this is the fast one. And after spending a week with it, I'm going to walk you through the best and the worst things about one of the first performance EVs that isn't $1 million. Welcome to Downshift Studios. My name is Matt. For the cars that we're reviewing behind the wheel when it's not single-digit weather and it's not been snowing and slushing and been horrible outside, that's our sister channel, Downshift Reviews. Check that out in the description below. We're going to start with the things that aren't so great to get those things out of the way right away. So first of the bad things, it's not really an SUV. It's not SUV practical, and what I mean by that is the trunk floor is pretty high. The sloped and tapered roofline for aerodynamic purposes really kind of eats into the practicality of the trunk space. So it's not super big like you would get from something like a Mach-E is a little bit bigger, the Ioniq 5 is definitely bigger, your Tesla Model Y is going to be bigger, so it's a bit smaller in that way. And then when you move up to the rear seat, your headroom in the back is abysmal. Seems like a strong word, but I'm 6'1", and I sit back there, and if I sit up like my chiropractor would want me to, I'm definitely rubbing my head on the back seat, or on the roof. Also rubbing my head on the roof in the front seat, in the driver's seat, but you do have pretty good amount of legroom in the back. Number two, navigating the climate controls is a huge pain. It's got that center toggle thing, which we talked about in the previous video. It's kind of that media or climate toggle, and I hate it. We're not gonna like harp on it a bunch, but the thing that gets me now, and the thing that I've noticed a bit more, is that even if you switch it to climate and adjust your temperature, if you don't touch it and you expect it to be back on climate when you go back a minute or two later, it's gonna be on media and you're gonna end up adjusting your volume rather than your temperature. Terrible design, hate it, but we move on. Number three is kind of an asterisk. It's the ride. I know this is the sporty one and I should be thinking of it as like an M3 in a sense, but this is also positioned as a practical daily driver crossover thing, and it's just kind of rough. You do have adaptive suspension, but with those 21-inch wheels, you are going to feel pretty much everything on the road, which if you're driving towards the limit or you're trying to whip around and have fun, that's what you want. But when you're just commuting to work and it's cold and you're tired and you just want to get there, a little bit more insulation and a little bit more numbness might be nice. And then there's the seats. They're the sports seats and they look really cool. They've got like the plastic chrome GT kind of embossed into the center. They've got the acid green stitching and piping on there and they look really cool. They also heat up really, really fast. Of course, they're 3-level heated seats up front, but they don't offer cooling and they're completely manual adjustments. It's an EV. It's not like we're really worried about weight savings here, so don't know why they couldn't have brought back in cooled seats or seats that are power controlled. These seats remind me a lot of what you get from an Elantra N, which is not in the same segment or in the same price category. So the seats to me are comfortable and they heat up quick and I like that, but they're still kind of a miss. And the last thing that we'll talk about on the negative end is range, and it's kind of a big one. The rear-wheel drive entry-level EV6, the Wind, gets over 300 miles of range. Okay, great, it's pretty competitive. The EV6 GT-Line, it's dual motor, all-wheel drive, bigger power, gets about 250 miles of range. Okay, it's kind of on the cusp of what I would expect and not expect, and then you get to this full power GT version, and that only gets 206 miles of range. Like that's just not competitive to me. The Tesla Model 3 Performance gets over 300 miles of range from a smaller battery pack with big power. It goes to 60 quicker. It has a higher top speed, and yet it has over 100 miles more range to it. But with that, let's talk about some of the good things about this EV6 GT. The first good thing is the charging. We talked about the range not being great, but you have one of the fastest charging EVs on the road. It's eGMP architecture. That means 800 volts. That means 10 to 80% charge in less than 20 minutes. So while you're stopping more often, you won't be stopped as long, in theory. Number two, this thing is absolutely rapid. This thing is supercar quick. 0 to 60 in 3.2 seconds. Top speed of 161 miles an hour. We talk about that pesky Model 3 performance competitor. That's 0.1 seconds quicker to 60, but this thing is still quicker to 60 than an all-wheel drive BMW M3 by almost half a second. And also, it's technically quicker to 60 than a Lamborghini Huracan Evo rear-wheel drive. I mean, this thing is proper quick. Number 3, it's fun. You have different drive modes which really change the personality of the car. You have a sport mode which you can go fast in, and then there's GT mode with an acid green button. It's kind of fun. And that turns off traction. And this is probably the most fun EV under $100,000. And what I mean by that is the steering feels more conventional to a sports car. The way that the power comes in and the rear end steps out, you have that front motor and the rear motor, but you have an eLSD on the back, so the back end will step out nice and progressively. It feels more like something that you're dancing with rather than fighting against. And I think that's a big compliment and something that you don't experience from a lot of performance EVs, so good on you, Kia. Nice job. Next is the looks. It also looks pretty good. I've gotten loads of compliments this week while driving it. The only issue that I have personally with the looks is that it looks almost identical to the normal one. You do have some slight changes in your front fascia and the lower bumper area. You have those vertical slats, and then you have it on the rear fascia as well. But then from that, you just have the big 21-inch wheels and the acid green brakes. And then on the back passenger side, it says GT rather than GT-Line. So it's very, very similar to the non-GT version, which just doesn't feel as special. And then we start to talk about the technology. You've got a bunch of the usual stuff like the sounds of nature and quiet mode and things that we've come to expect from the Hyundai Kia infotainment system. It's a good system. It's fast, it's responsive, it does all the things that I want it to do. You've also got Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, although they're wired. You've got a head-up display. You've got an augmented reality head-up display. You've got a big 12.3-inch digital cluster, 12.3-inch infotainment system. But the thing that tops the class for me here is the HDAS system, or their autopilot system. We constantly compliment the Hyundai Kia autopilot system. It's just good. And then we start to talk about the interior. While I have my issues with that kind of center media or climate display thing, the design itself is really nice. It's made largely of recycled materials, which is cool. The seats are actually pretty comfy despite some of my issues with them. The seats heat up really fast, same with the steering wheel. And it looks expensive in here, especially for a Kia. So not bad interior overall. Plus you have a load of legroom in the back. And then we talk about the rear seats. The back seat, again, is really impressive. It doesn't offer the same headroom that you get from the sister Ioniq 5, but that's kind of the personality of this thing. It's longer and also shorter to be more sporty, but the legroom in the back seat is fantastic, even for people over 6 feet. Plus you have 2 level heated seats in the back. Again, just pretty nice stuff. And then finally we have the price. The price is pretty right for something with this performance as well. The Tesla Model 3, thanks to the massive price cut that Tesla just made, is now cheaper, but as tested, this thing is under $63,000, and that's pretty much how it's gonna top out. It basically comes all the way spec'd out. And considering the performance, the rear seat space, the technology, and everything else, you're getting a lot of car for your money with this EV6 GT. So those are my favorite and least favorite things about the EV6 GT, but here are a couple bonus items that I just found interesting. One is the augmented reality head-up display. It's a cool concept. It integrates a lot of your driver assist features into your head-up display. You can see a lot more, but to be honest, I didn't really use it the full week. It kind of like fatigued my eyes the longer I looked at it, so it's a cool feature. It's a little gimmicky, but I think they'll work on it as time goes on. And then number 2 is the active sound design. You can actually change the sound that the car is making, of course, through the speakers. So some of the sounds are really funky. They're all pretty EV-ish. I kind of wish that you could have like a V8 sound or a V10 sound, or like you could upload your own sound, but you can customize how it comes in if you want it to kind of build gradually, or if you want it to come in really loud and then taper, or if you want it to just go straight up the whole way. I mean, it's just kind of fun. And it also has really nice 360 cameras. They're kind of German in the way that they go about it, where you kind of have that like God's eye view, and then you can kind of spin around and look around your car. The only thing that I will say is that your car will always be white. You can't really change the color of your car like you could in like a Toyota. It's not going to be color matched to the color of your car. Of course, we have runway red, and the car on the screen is white. And the only other thing that I will mention is that we were driving around, like I said, in snowy, salty, crappy Wisconsin conditions in January, and we got salt and crap all over the 360 cameras on the outside of the car, and then they don't really work. So just something to be aware of. Keep your car clean. But that's it. Those are the highlights and the lowlights of the Kia EV6 GT. Overall, I think it is a fantastic thing to drive. It's a fantastic sports EV, but it does fall short a little bit to me if Kia is going to call it an SUV. There are other more practical, bigger, more spacious, more comfortable options out there, but this is definitely a step in the right direction for an enthusiast EV. So well done, Kia. I'm looking forward to see what you do next. We'll see you in the next one.